Symposium on critical complexity, although this is a concept which is not used very much by Giampietro, our guest this afternoon. I think it actually characterizes the gist of his work, critical complexity in the sense of critical complexity thinking on the one hand, but also the critical complexity of the world we are living in and which we are trying to understand and to change. It's really a very big pleasure and also an honor for me that Giampietro was prepared to share some of his precious time with us. He is in Holland for a conference in Wageningen and tomorrow in Utrecht. And he mailed me that miraculously there was one day empty in his agenda. And of course he had other uses for this day, but if I would appreciate him coming, then this would be all right. And of course I jumped for the opportunity to ask him to share his views with us. I've been studying a little bit his work now for the past few years, and I'm getting increasingly impressed with its breadth and depth and complexity, and also with its great relevance for central problems of our time, especially sustainability and research on sustainability and science for governance. The setup is very simple. Professor Giampietro will give a presentation of, I think, half an hour. Then we will have an hour of questions and discussions, clarification. And then after the break, I will give a very short presentation in which I try to connect his work with more humanistic concerns, which are underlying many of the research projects, those here gathered in the room. So, Maria, I give you the floor.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. First of all, because I got my PhD from Wageningen, so and I have a Dutch wife, so but it was we lived in the United States, so last time I was in the Netherlands was many years ago, so it was been this day, being very happy to go around having blah. I'm a little bit nervous because I am an engineer, so I'm. And secondly, in general, I present things with a lot of numbers, whereas today there are no numbers, so I'm a little bit outside my field of expertise. But let's see. I mean, we will have a discussion.
It's not about credibility.
Yeah. Okay. So the idea was. To start with the idea of all models are wrong, but some are useful. And then getting into post-normal science, how many of you are familiar with the concept of post-normal science, just to have an idea? Okay, so I did well in including it, because this is something that it is not particularly known, even though this is getting a lot. And then finally, the moral implication, because it was required. This is where I have I'm not expert, so I apologize if I'm misusing concepts that are very well known and ignored to me. And I would like to work with this using the difference between scientific information and knowledge claims. That is in fashion. Okay. So all models are wrong, but some are useful. This is from George Box. And lately I've been helping my daughters doing philosophy, and then we were doing Bacon in philosophy. They said that this Bacon is someone belonging to philosophy for real, because in a way he's a weird philosopher. And I said, what is wrong about that? In reality, with Bacon you get this bifurcation to treat knowledge or scientific information no longer in an holistic vision. Before you had your knowledge being within a cosmological vision where we are. Whereas then you get into an idea that you are just handling a piece of reality, you are trying to get some useful information that is goal-driven, to do something. No? It is about developing tools or developing anticipatory model and something like that. So of course then you get into this dichotomy that of course every time you're doing something which is useful for characterizing one part of the reality for some purposes, this is necessarily wrong because you are losing something else, but can be useful because you can get your goal. So the real issue is what happens when you have to handle different models. They are developed in different aspects of reality for different purposes. Okay, then I will go very quickly because I believe that this will be very well known to the audience, but just to make refreshing the idea. One problem we have is on the descriptive side that there are many non-equivalent descriptive domains. That is called in jargon technical incommensurability, in the jargon of integrated assessment when you are doing models of different types. It's called technical incommensurability. And the most famous example is from Mandelbrot about the geographical object. You can have the Maine is on the east coast, so the orientation of the coast is east. Within Maine you can find a county in which the orientation of the coast is south. Within the county you can have a village that the orientation of the coast is west. Then you can have within the village a particular beach with the orientation of the coast north. So basically orientation of the coast, which is a legitimate statement, when applied at different scale of an object, it can be defined at different scale simultaneously, can be falsified. You can have an experiment here and then prove that Maine is on the east coast. You call 500 people, and then you can go here with the compass and see this beach is on the north. So you can have a scientific experiment to prove these statements. They are all true. But then, depending on what you have to do, if you have to make a phone call, this is the right one. You have to buy a house with a porch looking at the sunset. This would be the scientific information that you want. But there is more. Behind this different scientific finding, you have a different scientific perception. When you are talking about east coast of Maine, you are talking about space perceived as a globe. When you are talking of this type of perception, you are referring to space perceived as a plane. So then, when you have this type of problem, you have what is called non-reducible descriptive domain. For instance, if I take a picture of you with a microscope, I can get 1 zillion picture, I will never see your face. Your face is defined on a descriptive domain which is different from the descriptive domain I get with the microscope. So then, this implies the first point that we can have different scientific correct assessment, but of the same natural system, they are still scientifically different among themselves. And this goes also in causality. You can go why a person is dying, and then because doesn't have oxygen in the brain, this would be the emergency room explanation. He has a lung cancer, this would be something described in an hospital. Because it was a heavy smoker, if we are discussing about putting taxes on cigarettes, then human must die if you are discussing about the fitness of human species. They are all four very legitimate explanations. They are scientific explanations, but of course, I mean, if you have a person that is dying in an emergency room and you get a doctor saying the human must die, you wouldn't be happy. So the problem again is that it is not that it's impossible to have scientific explanation or need scientific explanation. The only thing is we have to learn how to use quantitative analysis and scientific explanation in the right place at the right moment. So the real issue is not on the quantitative side, but is before the quantitative side, how we handle the choice of discourse, of narratives, and so on. Okay. The second predicament that makes possible to use quantitative information in a grand narrative, but it has to get a piece of time, is on the normative side. This is what is called social incommensurability. And this is why if you do integrated assessment, you have to be participatory because you have to ask people what they believe. I mean, you cannot have a definition by default of what is good, what is bad. We don't need many examples here. This is the book gone by the producer of genetically modified organisms in Italy that says agriculture, the future, the safety, future, and realities go GMOs. And then if you go in Italy, you have that this is a sign. Giampietro is a small town, and it says the town anti-transgenic. No, if you want, at that time, if you want to become mayor, you have to put anti-transgenic on the entrance of your town. And you have a total this connection between what the scientists believe the people want and what the people want. They don't talk to each other. Another example, classic example, this is the Radulov Mladic. that is a dangerous criminal on the Interpol. And then if you go in Kosovo, this is a hero, no? You see that he's the only one fighting for the identity of the Kosovarian. So you see that the lady doesn't seem a terrorist, but still for her, this guy is a hero. So if you are running a model in which you have to put the number of terrorists, it is very unlikely that with this model you will convince someone about what they're supposed to do, because you will not be able to define what are the terrorists, because depending on who you're asking for, you will get different numbers in your model. Okay, another one very important is the discussion, the difference between risk and uncertainty. This is a battlefield, an incredible battlefield in science for government. As a matter of fact, you will never find uncertainty in documents of United Nations. You can find lack of certainty, but uncertainty is considered a bad word. It's not, because of course if you put uncertainty, all the optimization, optimal models collapse immediately. How to deal with ignorance in scientific analysis? It is bizarre, because Socrates' definition of scientists were about those that know about their own ignorance. But we forgot about the original definition of science. So basically what we do with reductionism, this is in 40 years of work. It is the only predictive, very strong, useful predictive power of reductionism or deterministic model. You can predict eclipses very well. This is, we can predict eclipses of sun, man, whatever. Everything else is more complicated. Why? Because if you want to handle the risk analysis, you should have something which doesn't change in time. So you must have a device erasing history, and you must have something which cost and benefit are clearly defined in advance, and everything remains the same. Then if you have these type of things, you have a probability distribution. You can assess the probability, you can make risk assessment. No? And then you can know who is paying, who is getting money. You can do a lot of things. But this is, you can define probability. Like if you could have blue rather than red, or you can have 32.5, then all these things will not work anymore. Then the second thing is that we learned that you have the famous butterfly effect, that there are, if history is in play, then we cannot make prediction. We cannot predict what is the weather in London in 3 months. But still, this is not ignorance, it's indeterminacy. Still could be a rain, could be sunny, could be cold, could be... For instance, we cannot predict airplanes of terrorists getting on the Tower of London, because this would be a completely different ballgame. No? Then you are dealing with ignorance in this situation. That's Alice drinking the bottles. What happens if she drinks? Nobody knows. No? We simply do not know. Then if you have this situation, you don't know the attributes of the system that will become relevant. Then you are in a total different situation. What do you do with science? Because then you cannot make any number of something that you don't know what could be. Then we had plenty of examples that after you know the problem, you can calculate all the risk. But before you don't know the problem, you cannot calculate the risk. The history of science is full of these type of things, but still, it is bizarre that we keep doing risk analysis every time we're doing something new on large scale. Just to give an example, this is the best expert on radioactivity, and she died because of radiation in her lab. And then it was no conspiration, no transnational conspiration. She simply didn't know. As a matter of fact, very interesting, they got a trial because the workers of a factory, they were getting cancer in the mouth because they were putting on watch the radium, because it was in the night they couldn't see. So she was called to testify in the trial, saying, no, of course it's absolutely safe, but I don't know who got this bizarre idea that the cancer of mouth could be used by associated with cancer. So I mean, it was no conspiracy, no anything, simply the expert at times do not know. It's that simple. You do something the first time, you don't know. Okay, then the last discussion about something which generates problem about our possibility of quantifying things in a very neat way is the complexity, the way we perceive and represent things. And this way, there is the famous work of Kussler, the Holland. I don't know how many of you know about Holland? Kussler is an Hungarian thing that basically was saying, okay, when you are dealing with perception, in reality you always deal with a duality. You have a functional relation and organized structure that is coupled at the same time, or you have a type and individual, then you have social role and incumbent, then you have essences realization, depending on, this is one of the pioneer of complexity theory. This was one hierarchy theory. This is social, this is the social science, I don't know if you know. And then Socrates, but I mean, this duality that when we perceive something, there is a sort of ambiguity of what we are perceiving is well known. For instance, you have the president of the USA, these are different incumbents, and this is the last incumbent into the role, and the role is always the same, the presidency. So basically, when you say the president of the United States, what we are saying the role, the functional type, or the structural type. And then of course, this is problematic because if you're looking at the structural type, a model and a real airplane are the same. And if you're looking at the functional type, an air balloon and an airplane are the same. Because I define the functional type as something able to fly, and I define the structural type as an expected set of relations. So again, you are getting into an ambiguity which is difficult to deal. Why that? Because especially if you are in a situation of evolution, you will get that different type of clocks are a clock, because it doesn't matter how you do it, they are doing the same function. Or you could have the same structure, a clock is capable of doing different function. It can be cash, can be a pendulum, can be a missing letter, can be a piece of museum, can be a weight, depending. And since this is the way, you can have the same, oops, there is a missing line. Okay, doesn't matter. That you can use a structure for new function. And you can find new function for a structure. So basically, as soon as you do a model, any model, your model can become obsolete. This is the classic problem with Jevons paradox. I don't know if you know that if you become more efficient, you consume more energy, not less, because you start doing new function with the old structure. So it's this is another classic example in which you are making a model and then the model is totally counterintuitive. And what happens is the reverse that you are modeling. Okay? Okay, now getting post-normal science. This post-normal science, the concept was introduced by two philosophers of science, Silvio Funtovis and Jerome Ravets, and this is the famous diagram. I don't know if you know him, we will go into it. And then this is about the predicament of science for governance. That requires adequate procedure of quality assurance in the process of production and use of scientific information for decision making. How can we guarantee the quality of how the scientific information? Because as soon as you have important decision with a lot of money behind, it really becomes complicated to know who is making the analysis. If someone is paying the guy, so how do you know that the analysis is has a certain quality? And how you know that those that are getting information are properly use all the information, they are not suppressing the information they don't like or not. So you get in a total different ball games in which it is not simple that you can trust the process. Okay. So this is the basic diagram. This is below is if you have technical incommensurability, the more you have processes that are complex, difficult to represent, you have to use more scale, and then you have new things that can happen, so you have more uncertainty and technical incommensurability on one side. And the other side you have normative, social incommensurability. People, they are perceiving good and bad in different way. You get this type of diagram. If you are doing something which is not controversial, and everyone agrees, for instance, making an elevator. Making an elevator is very simple. We have normal science. You take a book, you have a good engineer. If the engineer studied properly in a good university, he can make the elevator. Okay, it's not a problem. There are no. But let's imagine you have a delicate surgeon. They are making surgery on you, and at a certain point they can decide whether or not cutting your leg. Or there is a risk. Should we cut or not cut? Not that. in this situation, you are what is called professional consultancy. It is not true that any doctor is the same. You want to have a doctor that you trust. It's not, you no longer have a type, you have an individual, no? And second, really depends on you. In the sense, let's imagine you are a very young person. You say, no, no matter who keep my leg, I will rather die than losing my leg. Let's imagine on the contrary, you have 4 kids that depend on you. I say, no, cut my leg because I have to keep my family. So it really depends who you are talking with, the decision you have to take. It's not that simple. So you are out of just the science, you are just applying the book, but you have to, in a way, dealing with risk, some uncertainty, and also dealing with the special feature. Who's the person that is getting surgery and who's the doctor? What happens if you're getting something which is done for the first time, nobody knows exactly what can happen, and you have a lot of different perception about whether it's good or bad. And then this is what they call post-normal science. In post-normal science, you have that facts are uncertain, values in dispute, stakes high, and decision urgent. Even if you don't decide, you will be decided the same. So you have to take a decision in a situation which you don't know anything what to do. So the idea is that, okay, what happened here? So what we have, everything goes. If I understand well, you have the same vocabulary. If I understand well, this would be high ground, and this would be swamp, no? What is it? Low swamp. So, okay. So the real issue of post-normal science, this is why it came out, that it is true that high ground are only good for elevators, but it is also true that it's not possible when you are dealing with this type of thing, just saying everything goes, so we just do participation, because then the next step, we participate, they are participating, very often doesn't help much, because you get much more uncertainty and much more point of view. The more you participate, the more the system becomes difficult to handle. So in a way, you have to be able to address in some way some of the challenge when in this situation. Okay, in relation to this point, there is a difference proposed by Sheila Yasanoff about scientific information and knowledge claims. Knowledge claims are the type of information that you use to make decisions. So in a way, this has to be validated through some sort of process in which the society says, okay, this is the best we can do. So even though you could have uncertainty, ignorance, or whatever you want, still you must have institutionalized practice by which member of a given society test knowledge claim and legitimize their use for making collective choices. That at the moment is where we are really in trouble. Within the European Union, whatever, we still have a very old paradigm how decisions are taken by the guy with the white coat that say this is absolute safe. Or we have this kind of, all the people have to go on internet, send what they think, that not necessarily end up with some good quality check and legitimization of collective choice. So why now this is becoming a problem? It's becoming a problem for this is the explanation given by Silvio Funtovi that I really love. That how worked in the past. In the past was God telling the king what to do, and the king was telling the states what to do. This was the source of legitimization. So you have to pay taxes, and you say, why I have to pay taxes? Because the king says. Why? Because the God. Okay, so you pay taxes. After the French Revolution, something happened. God was removed, and we have the truth. So the truth is the good of us, no? And then you have to pay taxes. Why you have to pay taxes? Because the government says so. Why we should respect them? Because they know what they are doing. Well, how they know? Because they do the truth. Okay? So the legitimization was obtained by taking out God and the king by the Enlightenment. No, we are doing the best possible things because we know it, because science can define truth. So what happens if people no longer believe it? You have, we put a nuclear plant, we don't want it. Oh, it's totally safe, we don't believe it. Oh, GMOs are very well for you, and we don't like GMOs. And so what is the point? And then, in reality, the only thing you can do is replace the truth with the trust. You must have a society in which people trust that the process used to check knowledge claims is the process that is the most effective that you can get. And then it is not about in finding the best course of action with some white coat person, but just to have wise strategies that are generated by mixing expert, people, participation, but you have to structure in a way this type of interaction because it's not that easy. So again, applied science, professional consultancy, and post-normal science, there are a problem of who decides the validity of knowledge claim and how, what are plausible data models and scenarios, who decide the relevance of the issue, how can we guarantee the legitimacy of the process, and then these are the keywords of post-normal science. Okay. Just to get almost finished, I'm doing
No, you're going much too fast.
Okay. No, because it's better to discuss. I assume that more or less these concepts are more or less self-explanatory. Otherwise, we can go back if someone asks. Okay, so the difference between scientific information, knowledge claim, and where we get some moral or ethical issue here. Then again, guys, I'm not an expert of this, so I'm totally ignorant. As a matter of fact, I will be happy to have a discussion, so maybe I can clarify my doubts. But then in the actual discussion about sustainability issue, how to use science for governance, this would be in integrated assessment, multi-scale integrated analysis, participatory process, multi-criteria evaluation, institutional analysis, discourse analysis and conflict analysis. These are used in general all combined together. And this is where this type of issue emerge. Okay, so this is the definition of Millennium Ecosystem Assessment. I don't know if you were aware that in the last year we got a lot of these assessments. They were unfashioned, like thousands of people meeting in all fancy places of the world. This was Bangkok. So I've been involved in two, Millennium Ecosystem Assessment and Integrated Assessment on Science and Technology for Development. And the discussion was, okay, knowledge claim has to have three distinct checks. It must be scientific credible, has to have political legitimacy, and has to be practical usefulness, is addressing practical problem. If there are not these three criteria, it is not a knowledge claim. What is, of course, scientific information, what every one of us, or those that do scientific analysis do, you just put some numbers in it, you get some measurement, and then you fix in some way the numbers, and it's your contribution to science. That could be okay, could be not, but it is a completely different ball game than from a knowledge claim. That is very often, a lot of people do not realize that. It doesn't matter if you do your model, you measure things, it's not per se, this is just a contribution to scientific information, but before getting their status of knowledge claim has to go through the other three steps. Okay, so this is my complexity lesson 101. In general, the discussion of complexity can be very well explained by the Taoist philosophy. The world is the Tao, which is a process, and we are all part of the process, but we cannot know exactly what the process is. What we can know is what we name, so what we have perception and representation of the process. So it should be, and with the Tao it says, the Tao cannot be named, the name is the mother of the thousand things. So whatever we do, whatever we know, is because we put name on it. If we would get something never saw, never hide, a few slides very nice that you have to guess what it is, nobody knows, then in reality everything's very easy to see if you contextualize it. No? But again, this is the basic idea. So, the famous metaphor of the monks, everyone looking the elephant in different places will have different perception of the external world. So what is how we get a little bit in the modeling relation of Rosen to see where the problem is in the actual approach. So, in order to be able to perceive and represent a part of the reality, we are back on stuff. We are just looking at one part of the reality. Then you have two duality, the self and the other. And why is this? Because in order to observe the reality, you have to have a narrative about the reality of something which is relevant for you. Okay, then you perceive something, the other, that is relevant. Then you have to separate the other from the context. You have to, what are the attributes of what you are observing that makes a dog different from the context. So I have to have a definition of what I'm looking at, and then what I'm looking for. I mean, legs, 4 legs, tail that is moving, and so on. So you have to start with these 4 steps in order to identify something to observe. No, there are what we are talking about. Are we using a microscope, a telescope, or something, and then having decided that we are looking using a naked eye, what is that I want to observe which is different from the context? Okay. So basically, if we do this type of analysis, you have that the relation here in the process of modeling is crossing the doubt twice. One, on the top, the person deciding what to observe, what is relevant, why we are observing in the first place, and the second time is looking for external reference, what I am looking for. So I can say, I'm looking for a dog, so I have a typology of dog in mind, but then I have to find an external reference, something that matches with what I'm expecting. This is a dog that I can study what a dog does. No? So in reality, all these things is happening not in the DAO, but in our information space, in the name. Okay, let's see the modeling relation of Robert Rosen. And he was proposing that when we are doing a model, we start with a perceived natural system, something that we are perceiving as relevant. Then we are encoding this natural system into some attributes, relevant attributes, proxy variables. Then we make a formal system of inference based on our representation of the system, and then we use the result of the model to make inference about what the perceived natural system will do. Just to give you a simple example, because this is a little bit too theoretical, let's imagine we have a gas in a bottle that is the perceived natural system, and we are playing, say, okay, if I push the gas, it becomes warmer, no? Then this is our perception. Then, okay, we can encode this perception into different variables, pressure, volume, and temperature. Then you can write an equation. Then we can say if I'm decreasing the volume to alpha, then the temperature will increase. No? I can make prediction, and I can do it. And if my prediction here, or what happened to the gas according to this equation, is confirming what I'm finding in my perception, I say, oh, this model is good. It's a good model. So I am basically developing a representation of a perception that makes possible to get some anticipation. I can use it for making anticipated prediction or to study causality. Okay? So, what has this to do with ethics or with morality? This is an important point. Okay, let's first to give you an example of how the validation of this modeling relation should work when we do innovation in technology. And this is upstream, low stream, midstream modulation. I don't know if you are familiar with this. Okay, so basically the vulgata, the mantra goes in this way. The government decided to do something, a national policy, a new innovation. We should have genetically modified organisms. Then, of course, they go to the scientists and they say, can you do that? And then, of course, the scientist said, yeah, we can do it. Then, at this point, you start doing these things, and you involve the society in the discussion. He said, okay, do you like this new innovation? And they said, yeah, we like it, then we should do it. And basically, you have that the semiotic process, that is, you have an idea, you test an idea, then the idea is realized, and then it's proved, and it goes up and down, is used to select whether or not the ideas here, the perception or the narratives about the world, were the right one guiding innovation. In reality, what is happening now is something quite different. The government invests a lot of money in research, and generally now the most popular things is we need to increase the GDP because the economy is going on. So we are putting money in trying to revitalize the economy. Okay, the scientists are getting a lot of research fund. And they say, okay, we have to do it. Yeah, very good. More money is needed. And the transnational corporations are getting into it because since now we're getting a more and more mega project, these are million, billion, you know, there's ethanol, 19 billion. They are guaranteed, especially at the beginning, because it's all subsidies. It doesn't matter what you do, they will get the money no matter what. So, of course, really doesn't matter what the people think about it. You want nanotechnology, tomorrow we will have a big conference on new innovative things in Europe. That is in vitro meat, making meat from because they are all people cloning, don't know what to do, no, they want to clone meat. So I said, but already artificial meat is already been done, it's tofu, it's 2,000 years that they do tofu, and nothing happened, it's not changing dramatically, doesn't matter. Then the other is robots to help elderly, they can no longer move. The third one is computerized monitoring of people that can fall down in the but I'm fascinating that this is to revitalize the European so when the European Union started to ask the community of steel, carbon, energy, and now we do robots and things for there are these type of things that you, and the other is nanotechnology, that this is probably even more dangerous than all done before, because nanotechnology really is something that nobody can see, they are already doing a lot of things. But what is fascinating, that really doesn't matter what is going on. It's like with ethanol. Ethanol, at a certain point, the biofuel, the most popular biofuel produced, ethanol from corn, where 80% of the money is a system which consumes more energy than produce. That doesn't matter because this is about getting subsidies. Everyone was happy. The farmers were happy. The Monsanto then had a major problem because they put the commodity program in the amber box in the WTO, so they were afraid of losing the subsidy in agriculture. They saved the things. The car industry very happy because they say there is no problem, keep buying cars because if the gasoline will increase price, we will do ethanol. So everyone was happy about ethanol. So it doesn't matter. At this point, this system goes on its own. They are just using the money. You don't need anymore the moving across DAO to see whether or not you are doing is okay. Because as a matter of fact, the more absurd is the things, the easier is the possibility of getting money into this loop. Because if you're doing something reasonable, someone can stop you and say, guys, no, do it this way rather than the other. If you are saying we are doing a cube of 1 cubic meter of algae and this we will give power to all Utrecht for 1 year, and of course it's so absurd that nobody can tell anything because in a way here we are getting in a situation in which the quality check of the decision process is getting more and more difficult to control.
But isn't it always true is that these systems always run into those systems always clashing because this is a positive feedback loop.
Exactly.
And they tend to be very fragile.
Yeah.
So they run as long as there is funding. But,
Yeah.
because they just deplete the environment at a certain point they will always fail.
Perfect. We are now living in Ponzi scheme economics.
Right. Yes.
Take the money and run. Look at what happened now with the shale gas fracking. No, the largest part of fracking is in Dakota. I think that there are some historic cities there. They have to put an increasing number of wells to keep the same output because it's going down very rapidly. So they are right to a point that is now more the money to adding new wells than the money they are getting from gas. So why they are doing this? Because at the moment what you are doing is keeping high the value of the share of the company. So of course it doesn't matter if this is at the end is a lemon. For the moment we're talking about billions. The guys that are doing this are getting billions. Who cares if they can keep another 1 year having this share so high and selling all the shares? They will at a certain point the whole story will not get out any gas, but they will go with a lot of billions. Who cares? I mean, this is as this idea of market, especially at this level, and the idea that you are totally out of socio-economic context, the cultural context, everything is just market and money. At this level of money, anything happens. Who cares? Moreover, okay, now we are on record. I cannot make this. How do you know those they are saying the natural gas? No, we had the big report. I don't know which agency say that the United States will export oil and gas in the future. Those they asked for, the geologists were just laughing at it. It was just showing it was totally absurd. But how do you control that? I mean, this type of statement on an official document can imply billions for someone that has a company selling this type of things. So the control became very tricky, because when you talk about billions, you can go to the person writing the report and be generous, and you get whatever report you want. It's a lot of money. Okay. This exactly, you don't have the DAO, you have the name it, but who is naming the DAO, the name? Because especially when you're talking about nanotechnology or this type of things, nobody knows. You have to trust, and then you have to have mega project in which you no longer have free entrance for competition. I mean, you're doing this type of things, so you need 10 billions investment. Unless you are part of the big lobby that is there, nobody else can do it. So in a way, this guarantee to those that are in power, the remaining power get the money. It's not. It's an automatic system of filtering people that are not in power at the moment. Okay. So we get back into this, and then you can see that in reality we have what is called Foucault, no? Discourse formation from the power here, that defining different narratives about the self and the other, and then according to this one, you are selecting a shared perception about how to make your models. And then, of course, what is the quality check here? The quality check is whether or not these stories are stabilizing the storyteller, the power, the person that defined the discourse or not. So if this is true, then it's extremely clear that we have a problem here, because the power will select stories here, they are stabilizing itself. And if you get a negative feedback from here, they will just dampen it. It's called ancien regime syndrome. You just pretend that you don't get negative feedback here. No? As imagine, Kyoto Protocol. Everyone is happy with Kyoto Protocol. No? We did the Kyoto Protocol. You stop a moment and say, how is the Kyoto Protocol? Okay. Those that are polluting can keep pollute. Those that are not polluting are given money to pollute more. And you stop and say, where we are reducing pollution? Because this would be an interesting question. She said, no, we don't. As a matter of fact, you can see that after the Kyoto Protocol, the pollution has increased at the more level. But okay, this negative feedback never arrived. We are still all happy about the Kyoto Protocol. We want to do a Kyoto Protocol too, no? Even though it didn't make any sense, it didn't have any effect, it doesn't matter. At this point, the feedback from the reality are not processed because they are not included in the discourse formation that is at the moment considered. So you have two problems when handling this type of system, checking the quality of our choice. One problem on the mapping of the things. No? When we want to have measuring things, are we measuring the right thing? For instance, CO2 emission, fantastic. Measuring the CO2 emission of human system. In reality, if you do the CO2 emission of the planet, this is a marginal part. The real thing is the sea level things, the soil things. So land use is much more important, changing land use, than CO2 emission. But then the European Commission for regulating the biofuels has written that the change of land use should not be included, because otherwise it would be 60 times more damage to the biofuel than the other. So you start looking that what you are measuring here depends on what the discourse formation is willing to hear. So then, for instance, you are observing the number of farmers in Italy. Who is a farmer in Italy? This guy here that don't farm anymore, but they get the subsidies, or this illegal immigrant African, they are farming, but they are not existing. And so the point is that when we are talking about numbers, who decide what we are looking at? And even more, on the top, when we are deciding an issue definition, let's imagine we want to have an analysis of a particular problem. You have to do a new sewage system in Utrecht. Okay? So you are asking people what we should consider. Then the decision maker have some ideas, some goals. What are the attributes that should be considered? what are the models. The scientists, depending on you are asking, will come with different goals, different, and people, you will get all possible ideas about how to do a sewage treatment in Utrecht. Then, at a certain point, when you are going to the analysis, the technical analysis would be an impact matrix, now different criteria, different... when you are at the level of analyzing in quantitative terms these things, you will have to filter a lot of these people here. You have a compression. In here, you are considering only a few alternatives and a few set of criteria. Okay. From here on, you get the optimization, the empirical things, but how do we process this first compression? Because the first compression is where you really have the important things that is lost. When you are here, if you made a crappy compression, and you get here only alternatives that are supported by lobbies or the power things or populistic criteria that have nothing to do with the performance of a sewage plant, then you will probably have a bad decision here because you lost the most valuable information when you compress from here to here. Okay? So for instance, this is, I'm telling you, I'm coming from a project Glamour on food system, was exactly what are the criteria for food system. And they were starting with a huge matrix with all possible criteria, no? And of course this is not possible because what is good for consumer having a low price of food is bad for producer. The farmers likes a high price of food because they make more money. So you cannot imagine to have one single impact matrix for everyone. You must have one impact matrix for producer, one impact matrix for consumer, one impact matrix for the society as a whole, one impact matrix for the ecosystem. You have to adjust things, and I'm trying to be good at handling the different perspectives. It is not that we cannot measure things, but we must be clear that when we do this compression, either we have to split this in different matrix, or we are losing a lot of information on the top. Okay, just to end about climate change. Again, we had a group, a Dutch group, as a matter of fact, doing life cycle assessment for assessing the performance of food systems. And basically, the vast majority of environmental impactings is carbon footprint. This is fascinating. The only thing that is relevant now is carbon footprint. No? There are a lot of things that the food system does, especially in developing countries. You are kicking out people from their land, you are making plantation, losing biodiversity, destroying soil, water table. But we measure only carbon footprint. It's fascinating. From where we get this obsession with carbon footprint? Then, if you're reading papers, they were saying that the most important problem of our time is climate change. Then, if you're putting like a Gallup poll, more than a third of the world population never heard of global warming. 38%. 38%. Okay, then this is 2011. But let's see also if in developed countries this is the most pressing issue. So the American ranked climate change as top environmental problem in the year 2006, but environmental problem, not general problem. I was still there. Then in 2009, okay, global warming was number 20, no? Okay, because they start having the crisis. Okay. In the 2010 was no longer mentioned, but just was one of the various environmental problems, including global warming. In 2011, is no longer ranging from any of the preoccupation of of the people, which is fascinating. Still, all the money of research, everything is on calculating CO2 emission. So the problem is that if we admit that in sciences of governance the name of the game is deciding how to characterize what to observe and how, who decide the identity of the storyteller, for whom is relevant climate change. And then of course this is about Humpty Dumpty, it's about power. It's the master that decides what is relevant. No? And so what is here the discussion? That we can develop, but this is something that I'm putting on the table. I'm not an expert, so as a matter of fact, I will be happy to discuss this with you. in a way, ethics of what should be done according to our discourse narrative still is something that refers to the name part. And then you have that when you get the moral things, you have in a way to take responsibility of accepting the ethical discourse that is given to you, the sense, especially as a scientist. I never got any money or research because I refused to get into the climate change thing. So basically for the last 10 years for me it was impossible to make application because in sustainability you can only apply for climate change things. But for instance, in my view, we are dealing with a crisis of sustainability. We are running out of water, we are running out of everything. Even if tomorrow we will have a machine that can check all the CO2 and disappear magically, we will be exactly in the same sustainability crisis. So why we got into this climate change things? Because the economists said there is no problem whatsoever with the sustainability, the market will solve it. Then at a certain point said, maybe it's not solving everything, and then they realized they were completely out of the discussion of sustainability, and they managed to get back in the only issue which they can apply in the market, no? The travel permit and something else. Even though this didn't work, it was. But in a way, this was a way to decomplexifying a problem that was very complex, making it simple, that is about the right price of tons of CO2 and having some technological fix of it, because we can put some on machines to reduce the CO2 emission. And then we transform a complex problem in a simple problem, in a problem that can be handled within some sort. So in a way, for me, I was not into the way, the official way of formalizing the ethical issue of sustainability. To me, carbon footprint is not a measure of sustainability, and it shouldn't be. It should be, sustainability is a complex issue. You must have a set of different indicators. You cannot have just one. And moreover, the carbon, I don't want to use, the Netherlands can be used, but if you have a problem with a person that has a sustainability problem because it doesn't eat enough, or you will not measure shit. You have to measure what he eats and what he does. Measuring shit of a person is the thing that gives you the lower possible information about it. No? So if you want to see how a society is doing, you have to go with the energy, type of energy they are using, the impact that the energy does, the activity you do. Measuring CO2 emission is the last thing you want to do, is an information that can give you any information on anything, on the standard of living of people, technological performance, nothing. And then wherever you go on the planet, all the kids make number, they are measuring tons of CO2. That is, you know, this. So I didn't know. This is, as a matter of fact, I would like to have the feedback from you about this concept that moral is about taking responsibility for endorsing some ethical explanation. That especially in the historic moment where we are living now, we are living a moment of transition in which the economic is changing. We have been in economic growing for the last 50 years, 60 years, even more, probably it's still more, is it 1800 until now. Then it is impossible for people to imagine that maybe we can be living in a world that is no longer having economy expanding, especially developed economy. After the big oil in 2005, you can easily look at this in terms of energy. The energy use remains in a plateau, and basically since China, India and the others are consuming more, we are consuming less, and this is basically our crisis that we are living now. And then probably we will never grow again the way we are, because what we expect is that, okay, the crisis, I remember since 2005, say, okay, but in 2007 the economy will start again. No, in 2007, no. Still this year, no. In 2009, we start again. No? And now this year, say no. In 2012, no. In 2013, the second half, we start in 2014. Fantastic. I can put it by signing here that they will say in 2014, for this year, no, but in 2015, for sure. It is difficult to imagine that we are changing. There is a transitional period. Maybe the economy will not grow again. And we will have to adjust. It's not a tragedy. It's we can do very well using half of the energy we are using now. In the 60s, they were using half of the energy we are using now. Do you think that the people in the 60s were less happy than us? I'm not sure. And then, but we have to admit that we have to change what we are doing. And unfortunately, a lot of ethical consideration, a lot of normative things, a lot of studies and narratives about what should be done have been developed in the era when the economy was expanding and probably are no longer good for dealing with the type of problems we are living now. That's it. I think that's, yes. Okay.
Well, Professor Giampietro, thank you very much for a high-powered and very spirited presentation, flooding us with ideas and informations and concepts and jokes, luckily also. So let's just start with a round of clarification. I mean, where did you lose him? Where did you think I would like to see that sheet again? Because it's a big story. It's a lot of ideas and concepts, and I think they are highly relevant, but they are not that easy to stomach. So let's start with a kind of clarifying round. Who can I invite to?
You see, I think it was clear.
Yeah. Yeah. Too clear, crystal clear. Yeah.
Yes, I had a problem understanding the moment in which you passed from your explaining of complexity systems, I would say, to the normative sheets or the element of ethics.
Yeah.
And then you gave an example of a system, bioethanol, for example, in which a lot of interests are related, and in which there is a lot of complexity involved. So I would say complexity.
This one?
Yes.
Yeah.
The complexity is a method to explain everything, also the things which are non-ethical, I would say. Then ethics comes in, but it wasn't clear to me. It is not coming from the complex model itself. It's coming from outside into the complex system. So you have to put something from outside into the complex model in order to make a kind of political statement.
Okay, now let's go back to I think there is something, okay, if you are doing this type of simple things, where complexity enter into play here, in two different ways. That, first of all, you don't have what is observed is not real. It depends on what you are, the perception that you have, how you decide to encode. So basically, the both things here are created by us, in the sense. Now, depending, if I'm looking at you with a microscope, I will not see your face. So, especially now, the humans are able to build observation things. No? Now, when we are observing things like the boson, other things, how real is the boson? Because you are starting building things that see what you define, you will see. And basically, at that point, it became very tricky to see where, if you're observing the Tao, you're observing your definition of the Tao. But coming to your point, so how you validate this perception representation? If these things is useful for doing something, that the certain point is like, I have a perception here that I push, it become warm, and I have a model here telling if I push, it become warm. If this equation is predicting my perception, this model is true. Okay. Then you have to do something more, extrapolating the same process at a higher level, that you have a sort of semiotic process in someone have, this time is no longer a perception, it's an idea about things to do, then you can do this type of idea, then you can prove it, and then if you prove it, this is true. But going into the post-normal science things, the more complex get the issue, the more you get in the swampy land, in the sense that on both sides, on the how to perceive and represent became more and more difficult because there are many things to consider. And you have on who decide whether or not this is good or bad became more complex because there are people with different opinions. It becomes more and more difficult to have a simple upstream, midstream, downstream, because if you're doing something simple, the elevator or something like that, we need an elevator, we make the elevator, you like the elevator, yes. But if we start talking about the future with nanotechnology, they will, you start making a lot of claims that really nobody knows. They are totally uncertain. Then at this point you start getting a lot of actors going on the vertical axis, the transnational corporation, the scientists became social actors on their own. If you have a lab with 25 postdocs, you have to give a salary to them, or they get kids, and you have to pay their salary, then you start saying, whatever, I had this temptation a couple of times to get into climate change research, because if you have people to pay, and you have money to do climate change, you start doing climate change, because this is not, because even climate change, in my view, was not the right thing to do. You could do it because to get the money, for the kids.
So this is your answer. Here comes the normative.
So you,
At this moment.
you get a normative issue here, because then this actor here, they have their own agenda independently of the agenda of the best of humankind.
So the climate models are much too simple, but are profitable for researchers
For
to go.
this was climate change or whatever, in this case nanotechnology or GMOs, no? I have a lot of friends that they are doing GMOs, that they no longer believe it anymore, but since they have the corporation, they have to go with GMOs because it's the only way to get the money. Or economists doing cost-benefit analysis, no? Nobody now do cost-benefit analysis for panda, value of panda things, no? But still everyone is there because, this is our job, we have to do cost-benefit analysis in the sense you have that many actors do have their own agenda as well. So as soon as the system becomes complex, you have many dimensions at the same time. You have the person is at the same time a scientist, a father, the director of things, is Dutch versus is Islamic, so the more you get high in things to do, complex things to do, the more you get that you could have a combination of interests, the shortcut, the regular operation, the school, government, how to do it, we do it, how is it, no? You start getting, if it is very complex, you have enough resources to have a shortcut. And then you can operate without the check anymore. At this moment, the vast majority of the operation of innovation, they are based on the mobilization of money, subsidies, people that get the subsidy to do it, and they just do it. There is no, they never arrive here. To be like the Ponzi scheme, no? You get the money you give the interest with the money, then you give the interest, the money with the money. At a certain point you run, and for 3 years you got a lot of money.
I was at a conference last year at the European Union building in Brussels on nanotechnology, and it was very positivist. And so the first round you would hear all the researchers who were doing all these nice things with new nanotech, and you could really see this stream going on. But what really struck me was that in the second round there was more philosophical and more societal debate, and there were the critical sounds. And yet all of the people there were still upholding the big promise of nanotech. And so when I suddenly asked, but is nanotech going to live up to the expectations which are present, everyone fell silent. But I knew that because I've got a background in artificial intelligence, and we've seen the same discussion, the big promises in the 80s, we would have the robots in 2000 who would do all take care of all the things. It never happened. And of course with nanotech it was the same thing. But I realized that also, let's say, the social researchers and also the philosophers on nanotech had a stake in the big promise.
because they were the people who were going to hold the critical voice, who were going to be, let's say, who were going to secure that it would be presented in a nice, constrained fashion. So it makes me realize that it's very hard to get out of that loop over there if even the critics at some point have a stake in the story.
Moreover, the more is theoretically hypothetical things you have, the easier this is, like your fusion, no? Nuclear fusion. You need, they are doing now this, there is a plant they are doing in France. No? It's called ITER, I don't know what is the acronym mean. But I mean, this is, I don't know, many billions. Of course, this is, nobody knows anything, nobody understands anything. It's an enormous amount of money. If you talk with the people, they don't, they don't have any. But it doesn't matter. It's about keeping some.
No, that's not true about this project.
Look, I am an engineer. When I was young, in the 70s, they were telling that in 30 years we will have fusion. Now it's 2010, 40 years later. Now they say that maybe in 50 they will have the first things. So after 40 years, 30 became 50.
But you're extrapolating the past. What you should do is look at the present, how much is known.
Okay, however.
How much is known?
I don't know. I don't know.
Lots is known, it's going quite well.
Okay, good.
I won't talk about the nanotech, but at least the fusion.
No, I hope so.
Living and talking about the 70s, how do you look at the Club of Rome and its effect and all this?
This is another fascinating thing.
Yeah.
You know that there is a book out, has been published last year, Ugo Bardi. It's called The Limit of Growth 30 Years After. No? And if you're looking at their prediction, they are exactly on the money, more or less 5%, with all the prediction. You know, give me any prediction done by any economic things after 10 years. This is a 40 years distance. And this is scary because you have to look at what happened in the next 10 years. We are just on the edge of the disaster, but it doesn't matter. I have the
perverse mechanisms.
Yeah, but I have the presentation. No, but what is very interesting that I've been into ecological economics for 20, 30 years, and then the analysis of the limit to growth has been used by economists to villainize, these idiots doing biophysical analysis. Look, what if this is the most ridiculous analysis ever done? If you're looking at their prediction now, that you can renormalize the book, they are exactly with all the variables that they put down. And talking about the power of the choice of discourse formation. Basically, this has been used in teaching classes to show how stupid were the people doing biophysical analysis. They were gloomy, the prophet of doom. This was totally different. It was not totally different. What happened was exactly what they predicted. At the moment, all the parameters are exactly in the way they predicted. But because of the Cold War, this is difficult. In the 70s, they had a big confrontation in science between the prophet of doom and the cornucopians. No? A lot of economists, Georges Courage and Boulding, were saying perpetual growth. How is the famous quote of Boulding? Only someone that believes the perpetual growth can go on a finite planet is either a madman or an economist. It was his I don't know, of course, everyone can say, you cannot grow forever in a finite planet. But what happened? Because of the Cold War, we won the Cold War not because of the army. We called the war won because of the ideology. They said, with market capitalism, everyone became rich, no problem. And then, of course, population was a problem, So they had to carefully remove any reference to biophysical aspect of the economic process. If you invite another time, I have a very nice presentation about it. You look, economics managed to take out all the places where you are in touch with biophysical reality. Also the energy intensity is per unit of GDP. But nobody say that you are using less energy per unit of GDP because you are increasing the GDP much more. So you are using more energy, not less, even though you... No, it has been carefully taken. You never see any biophysical part of it. So what happened is that because of the Cold War, basically we removed on a larger scale, if you want, this type of quality check. We never measure here whether do we have enough land, enough water, enough energy to do what you are working on. Because if you do this calculation really on the back of the envelope, you see that it's impossible to have 9 billion people having the same standard of living that we are having now. It's impossible. And they say they are cutting 80% of they do this in Copenhagen, this kind of fantastic. We will cut 75% of energy consumption in 25 years. No? Let's imagine I will say, okay, in 50 years, we'll cut 75% of what we eat. So we will eat 75% less. Would someone believe this? Come on, this is ridiculous. Why people believe that the society can cut 75% what they eat without losing functionality? No? Because, you know, it's ridiculous. Well, how you reduce 75% of energy consumption? Where? What you cut? But since all this discussion, discourse formation about the economic system has been very careful in taking out all the reference to biophysical reality. I studied energetic when I was 18, 19. Today there is no energetic in any university on this planet. Energetic has been removed. The analysis of energy, those that are using energy are economists that are using price to look at the, but not systemic analysis of energy flows. It was very on fashion in the 70s. Now it's getting back. Now finally all the JRC things, a lot of universities are calling establishing programs, but we had a total lack of any concern with biophysical variables for 20 years, in the 80s and starting last decade. It was completely removed. So in a way, we lost the ability of checking whether what was proposed as a pattern of development was actually compatible with biophysical variables.
So, yeah, the last few years there have been programs on sustainable energy and technology in several universities.
Yeah, no, what I'm saying is that, no, I know because I just wrote a book on energy analysis, so we were required by the publisher to check all the books there are on energy analysis, on theory of energy analysis. There are none. There is a guy that published something, I think, 98. But in the theory of how to do energy analysis, the epistemological part, we ran a conference, biennial workshop of advanced energy studies. There are not many people that do that. You have people that work on energy systems, but not that get into theoretical issue how to do energy analysis. As a matter of fact, if you know groups, let me know because we have a big network. I know people that are here, a few, Groningen, they do also metabolism.
And what in Wuppertal?
Wuppertal, yes, but Wuppertal more material flow. However,
yeah, thank you for your very interesting lecture. I have a question about already the term positivism fell already. You seem to say that, and I would agree with that if you say that truth, in this, let's say, is replaced by usefulness or relevance. But on the other hand, you seem to say that scientists, there is something like speaking truth to power. Because if scientists say something like, we cannot have growth, etc., then you seem to take that as a statement which is true in itself, and not related to whether it's relevant or not. And all these statements, for instance, your example of the farmers in Italy, when you count only the farmers receiving subsidies, and you call that the right number of farmers, that is relevant or useful to some actors in society and not relevant or useful to some other actors in society.
yeah.
So, would you say is also in this example, when you say this is the way the process works when it's biased by powerful lobbies, but that's a very negative thing. It's not always the case.
No.
And so, would you still say there is something like a true statement, like speaking truth to power, or would you go radical and say, okay, but everything scientists say, or any other actor, is right within a certain perspective and not right within another?
Yeah, I would go for the last one, but this is a obvious statement, no? That every statement you do can be useful in a certain situation or not. You can even have a total lie, but imagine you are saving life. You know that this building will be bombed any moment. You invent an excuse to make people run away because there is a monster coming. If you manage to get something done properly, it's okay. So it is not the issue whether or not your statement is true. If you trust, because the original discussion of Silvio Funtovis was to replace truth with trust. That trust is that, for instance, this is an example. Let's imagine we are in a situation here in which have people that are totally uneducated or real with the Indians, and then I know that you will get the toxic gas into the air conditioning. So in order to have them escape immediately, I start saying, there is the evil spirit of Boom Boomba, they will arrive in the room, so you have to run away. No? In this case, I will tell a lie, but I will tell a lie because it's the only way of having the evacuation of the building immediately. No? So in this case, it really doesn't matter whether what I'm saying is right or wrong. It's the trust that I am doing something for the well-being of the people. So if you are in a situation which it is almost impossible to define if it is true, what is a fact, or what is not a fact, because you have too much uncertainty or too much ignorance about what can happen. The only way of legitimizing some sort of collective action is that we are doing the best we can.
Okay,
I'm not doing this because I want to screw up you, or I'm doing this because I do my things.
Yeah.
But we are doing this because this is the best we can, and it's the best we can agree on. And the idea of post-normal science is that if you arrive in a situation you really don't know, because whatever I tell you about the fact that we should leave this room will be in any case not accurate. So what the criteria of who is saying the most accurate things that in any case will not be accurate enough lose any validity. What it matters is that if you can trust one of the people that is telling you something not accurate, but not because he has in a personal agenda, but because he is trying to do the best he can. No? I don't know if I'm answering to your question correctly or not.
Yes, but because you're saying that it's the main driver is the well-being of the people, but a lot of people will not see that as their main driver. So you still will stick.
But then you don't trust them.
In your art, this chapter number 4, you speak in a sense like society can go for a total denial of the fact, etc., about with the failure of the policy of the tradable permits. Well, that's one way of putting it, of course. I mean, it's a very useful way of looking at carbon emissions from a certain viewpoint.
Yeah.
So, but you see, so you are a storyteller yourself, but you don't seem to reflect on that point that you have a normative stance yourself as well.
Of course.
That you do. Right.
Everyone has a normal
Yeah,
stance.
of course.
This is
Of course.
obvious.
But the difference with, okay, I'll leave it at that, yeah.
No, I understand everything. Moreover, they believe in perpetual growth and the normality that the experts know what they are doing has been very effective. This is the problem. This has been what generates our standard of living. This is why the Western civilization is ruling this planet. So in a way, this is the most difficult part, because we learned that the system before was operating in this way, and it was operating pretty well. The white man was doing things, the white scientists were doing, and the white were doing very well. So we learned that market is good, the capitalism is good, and it's the best thing to do. And then this has been validated. This is the problem. Not the problem. I'm happy that it has been validated. We are, as a matter of fact, if you were a Chinese worker living with pollution and cannot smoke and working every day 10 hours a day, including Saturday and Sunday, we will have a different perception. But I mean, since we are here, this has been very well validated. The problem is that now, in this situation, you have some lobbies that are no longer associated with countries because you have transnational corporations. They are not even Dutch, Italian, European, and United States. They couldn't care less. It's just something out of any cultural context that are operating this loop, that are not controlled by anybody. Because then, look what is happening now in Europe. You are in a quite stable society, but look what happened in the south of Europe. You can vote whatever you want, and you get someone from Goldman Sachs. No, let's be extremely clear. In Italy they voted Berlusconi, whatever, it could be a clown, doesn't matter. But the important is the people voted someone, and you get Prime Minister, someone of Goldman Sachs. In Greece, in Italy, in Spain, in Portugal. And if you do something that you don't like, they start moving the spread. And unless you put someone of Goldman Sachs, you will not be able to do that, no? So you start getting a little bit strange, the situation, no? Because we have these loops, they have a scale so big, they are more important than national economies. And if we keep this way, it will be even affecting at the level of the European Union, it will be affecting the United States, because the amount of financial resources they are controlled by very small groups is becoming really, really too large compared with the feedback control that we have. But we used to.
Does your modeling, the conflict model, provides also in an idea how to blow up, how to distract this interaction between all these parties in the upstream and the midstream? For example, Goldman Sachs. It isn't guaranteed that this will go on. This revolution.
I don't know. In Italy, I don't know. I will probably now the result of the election will be available. I will check later on. But for instance, in Italy at the moment, there is the possibility the majority will be taken by a clown, a comedian, Grillo, because it's the only person that people now trust that they will do something else. That they tried Berlusconi, another form of clown. Now they get directly a comedian. This is a comedian. Because people, no, the people that do not live in Italy, they don't know how serious the situation. I mean, I've been living in the States. But I mean, if you get a situation when a country they start voting a comedian or whatever, it's because they tried everything else. No? It's the desperation that you keep voting someone else. No? But it is true that at the moment, for instance, you have that the democracy in the southern part of Europe is no longer working. Because if they want to get rid of Rajoy, the Prime Minister of Spain, in 3 weeks, the way they did with Berlusconi was fascinating. They were the spread, you know, the difference of buying the boats of Italy compared with Germany was 500. It cost a fortune, so the government can no longer finance themselves. So Berlusconi said, okay, I resign. And overnight it went from 600 to 200. That is almost normal. They say, no, but I want to stay, 580. No, I resign, 200. No, they can do it what they want, because they stop buying the debt or not. So basically, as soon as they do this, they can get rid of any government that they don't want.
But following this model, you can say there is a narrative about democracy, but we can see that it isn't democracy so much, that the people aren't, yes? And what can we think then further on by using your modeling?
I don't know, but what I'm saying, looking at your question, the complexity, that when the system becomes very complex, at a certain point you can have a lot of shortcuts going wrong, and one is the democracy. It's not only the way you are selecting big policy, but also the way you are selecting your government.
I think there's something similar in the two last questions and also my question. when I asked about the position ethics is taking in your model, I referred to ethics in the sense of a more possible model that shows how things should be. And you were just referring to how interests develop and how interests are looked up in a complex system. But now we have seen that you have also a normative stance. So you must elaborate in your model some kind of ethical element that is more complex than what you are now giving, because the complexity theory and the post-normal science situation says that there is no decision making on the level of values. That's why there is complexity. That was one of the important things, uncertainty and values in dispute. But now you are referring, you are criticizing things happening in society because you have certainty about how things should be. So you have to model in your complexity structure also some element of ethics in which there is no such thing like value dispute.
Yeah, I would like to clarify, maybe we have a misunderstanding. I really don't know anything about ethics or morals, so I don't know. I don't know. This is simply an example that I was saying. This could be a way to interface this discussion with ethical moral. What I do, my job, I do integrated analysis. So what I do, I try to use complex system analysis. I don't know, I didn't present other things I knew, I assume that maybe you already saw things. I analyze society among different levels, and then I say, look, the resources of a society are used as shared by different functions. If you are using something, doing some activity at the household level, you are using activities that can be used for services. If you are doing in agriculture, you are using resources that be used to do something else. You can quantify these, you can have indicators, you can say, okay, if in the life of a community or a society or whatever, you have a diagnostic tool to see whether you are doing things comparable with others, if you're doing better or worse than other people, other societies. You can make scenarios, what happens if I change things. But I, on purpose, never got into any normative question on decision making. I don't have the expertise for doing this.
Well, I think you're too modest here. I
no.
think your work contains a very strong normative position, a radical democratic position.
But I would doubt that a radical democratic things could run complex system, because you have to decide at the speed that a radical democratic process. I don't know. I mean, guys, be extremely clear. I don't have any solution how to solve the problem. My point is that one, it is not true that if you have a messy, swampy situation, you cannot use science or you cannot use quantification. It is possible to use quantification as long as you admit that is not the only things. You can have different analysis for different dimensions. You can still even use a different analysis in an integrated way. You can even make a bridge among different scales and still use quantitative information. It's not true that the only things to do is to have a participatory process about qualitative discussion about what is good, what is bad. But then in the normative process, I see a lot of trade-off, because the more you want to include, I don't remember if this was before or after, the compression of the different actors. This is really, maybe later on. Because the real issue here is how to do this compression. This is where the power and the normative part get in play here. Because then you have science here, and then you have all the tools that you want. But how to do this compression, and this is where the normative part enter into play. Which are the goals or the taboo on the values, they are more important. Because of course we cannot consider all of them when we are doing into a problem structure here. how to do that, then I associate with the ethical, moral, normative part. I'm not sure whether it is compatible with your definition. But I mean, how to do that, I don't know.
And you might argue is that in many ways is your alternative narrative still closely hinges to, let's say, that dominant story about, let's say, power structures and money, because you could also argue is that currently we have a lot of people who make 25 million a year and even more. They're billionaires, they're people who have more money than ever conceived before in history, and yet it's not used to elevate people, it is not used to elevate society. They buy 6 private jets instead of 5, and so you could say that in many ways money has become without value. And you see that actually in the interest rates, I mean, they're at an historic low. It is, in some way you could argue, and I'm not saying that this is true, is that the system has already, let's say, broken itself up because money is no longer a powerful subject in the narrative that is still being told, but we are still not realizing that yet. And this is an ethical. This is an ethical thing.
Yeah, but still coming back to the discussion, I was saying like the decision I was trying to do ethics, moral. Maybe this is wrong. This is my own understanding. But for instance, this was the discussion we had before. Let's imagine that now I am with all kids, and then there is the meteorite arriving. I have to convince them to escape, and they say there is the monster arriving. And the situation will be completely different. You are all adult things. I have an idea that there is a good risk. I'm trying to convince you to leave this all as soon as possible. Of course, I cannot, one, because it will not work if I say there is a good, evil, bad, evil spirit arriving. But also, if this would be a longer thing, something happening in 5 years, and I have to convince you about something to do because of something in 5 years, I have to use a different approach. So when is okay the approach of lying for the or other? Because of course it depends the time that you have available for convincing or to select how to go from here to there. If you are piloting an airplane, you don't have any time to do a democratic decision on what to do with the passengers. No? So basically, with the piloting an airplane in a crisis, the democratic procedure is not a good one. What I'm saying is that this is really, to me, the most difficult conundrum in how to deal with complexity, because in reality, discourse formation in general takes a lot of time and is within a context, within an institution, and at times you can do it the conventional way, at times it doesn't, at times you need discontinuities, at times, this is something I don't know, guys. So I will be extremely clear that what I do how to do the structuring of these type of things, how to have different of matrix of problem structuring for different dimension or different scale that still can be related to each other. But what I'm working more is on the representation and the perception quality check. The normative part of how to make decisions really is out of my expertise.
But maybe the normative part has different.
Your question.
Different levels, because you have a very powerful, very strong theory of power relations. And when I read you correctly, what you are saying at the most general level is our world society is denying the reality that we are on a course which is ecologically unsustainable.
Yes.
And the most biggest part of scientific research is helping us to suppress this, not to address this reality, but to suppress this reality. And this poor description of our models is related to the poor quality of the normative process, because this is, you say, dominated by power blocks.
And poor quality. For them is high quality because they have any power.
Okay.
So
but here is your normativity. Here is your normativity.
Yeah.
You criticize this as a one-sided form of power which impedes us to confront realities. And I think you are telling us as a scientist, hey guys, things are going terribly wrong in this way. That we need a very, there are going to be very big changes, and how much will they cost in a human
No, I accepting the things that I have my normative views. What I say is, guys, your story, that is different from my story, imply that you have to accept representation of the reality very poor quality, the sense. What I'm saying is, this science which is used for denying that there is the impossibility of sustainable or perpetual growth is a very poor science.
Yes.
This is what the only attack I can do is, I'm not saying that I am right or that my story are better
Do you
than
think
yours.
that
What I'm saying is that according to the rule of scientific rules that are given by the assuming the science as axiomatic thing, the story they are using to say that perpetual growth is possible are very weak. And you can show it in all possible things. I mean,
do you think that the other parties, the people who believe in that perpetual growth, that they can be that they use the same for what counts as valid science? Because that's what
Yeah.
you seem to imply when you say this is the only attack I can do.
no, what I'm saying is that, for instance, they have been using whatever, for instance, the value of Panta, the value of the planet. You know? According to economic theory, there is a distinction between existence value and exchange value. Okay? Price measure exchange value, not existence value. I cannot have the value of your mother in dollars. Okay? So if you are using exchange value for measuring the value of one planet that we have, or the value of your mother, you are not doing good economic analysis.
Okay.
Economists will not accept this. And it's a scandal that all our environmental economics is done by using exchange value for value. And so on. They are using substitute video value, the input automatic. You go, so this is impossible. It's not consistent with all known about how to do this type of things. You know, you can go on, and then you can, the substitutability of production factor, you cannot make energy according to the first law of thermodynamics. You know, you can go and then you can see that one by one, all the science that is used to keep claim that perpetual growth is possible, therefore we should use cost-benefit analysis, internalizing all the costs can be known, measured, internalized. This is completely fantasy. It's not, that is not even according to economic theory, let alone if you're perspective to check the feasibility of this claim in terms of quantitative terms.
But Mario, there is, I think, a very strong normative perspective here, because you say there is poor descriptive quality, and this poor descriptive quality is related to the poor quality of the normative control process. So there's one story dominating, and this story. So my point is, you have an idea of a rich normative quality system. It's implicit, but it's there. When you talk about poor normative quality, you also have an idea about rich normative quality.
No, yeah, but then to me the discussion is here. Is here, okay? What I'm saying is, if you are telling me that you know the truth, because the truth can get the good, and the truth can be good by science, I'm telling you, the truth that you are telling me cannot be obtained by the science that you are selling me.
Yeah.
I'm only doing this. If you are using multi-scale, multi-dimensional things, you cannot do a science that is justifying this type of legitimization.
You're also saying there's power involved in the definition of the narrative.
Exactly. And I'm saying that in reality this science here works only on the discourse formation that is given by power. So
Yes.
this system doesn't work.
Yes. So then the question would be, do you have fantasies about a less one-sided power structure, or a less one-sided?
This is what Silvio comes out. In my view, this system is very difficult to implement because this requires a lot of time and a lot of resources for each decision you have to make. So this again, I don't know. I don't have a solution. What I'm saying is that it would be nice to start working on alternative solution. And the other things is that we should take responsibility for what we do, because we are always living in special cases. So, and not using, you know the movie Blade Runner with the replicants, you know? And the replicants had memories of someone else. So they are doing things, but because not they had a real experience, but because they have been implanted memory. So in a way, what is happening now, we are living, taking decision on memory done by economies of things in the 18th. The market is good, the comparative advantage of trade. Of course, at the time, the capital was not moving, so you more trade, the better. Now if you trade, all the capital goes where cheap labor is. It's completely different, but we are keeping organizing and making decisions, or very often even ethical decisions about so I don't eat meat because this is damaging the environment, because it is always the same. No? If you go fragile environment, on the Arctic, on the desert, you don't disturb the ecosystem. If you are a vegetarian, you destroy everything, you just plant your plants. So, I mean, we are all this type of very simple association, this is good, this is bad, that is not always the case. And we should be a little more complex to realize that we are living in special situation. Maybe we should reconsider or take responsibility every time because you think at that point is the best thing to do, and not because you are trusting that this is the way of doing it, because we are living in a moment in which we should learn to do things in a different way. But it's not good to rely on common wisdom of axiomatic definition of what is
So
good.
there we have your normative position, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, but I admit that you cannot be without values. You have to have your values, but
Okay. One last question before the break. Yeah.
I have a very small question. Why, I'm sorry that I was a little bit late, so I didn't get all the message, but what I see is a little bit that you start to look at what I prefer to call the macro models. And one of the answers could be the weak signals of persons, of man. And that means that you must have a complete different way of looking at things. So it is not macro, but more micro, where the answers lie and are and can be found. And that is not at all found in your modeling, as far as I see.
I would again say these are not models; they are just ideas. What I do with numbers are grammars. Moreover, I'm not using models on purpose. I use grammars, which is a set of expected relation among semantic categories. They are not models. But these are not even grammars. These are just schemes. So I'm not sure whether I'm getting. What I do for living, I do a analysis of metabolic pattern of societies. So of course, what I'm looking at are pattern of self-organization of social system described above the individual level. As a matter of fact, the lowest level that we get is households. So we have metabolic pattern of households, where the individuals reproduce themselves. Then we have metabolic pattern of communities. Then you can have regional or national scale, and then we can have at a higher level. And how this is interacting with these ecological systems. And then you can have this evolution of pattern at different scale. Within this, you can look at implication for social economic activities or for, but we are not into the analysis of individuals, of individual motivation. I'm telling you, I'm totally ignorant. This is what I started this. And then, because again, you lost the introduction, I'm an engineer, to start with. Okay. So I got into then studying biology, and I was doing ecology a lot. Then I got into economics. At the end, when I got a PhD, it was in social science with Ms. Rolling in Wageningen. And then this was on the problem of how to use quantitative analysis in governance. So this is why I got trapped in this type of. And then I started working with Silvio Funtovis with the post-normal science. But in a way, especially at the beginning, my work was quite technocratic. It was about how to use quantitative information within a process of decision making, trying to guarantee as much as possible the quality and to avoid bias. No? That is normally the one that was the original idea. And then later on, I started working on complex system theory and then trying to see what are the epistemological reasons why it's so difficult. And lately, I'm getting into a little bit more about language and how to define truth and untruth. But in a way, you have to be in mind that I'm an engineer, so I'm quite ignorant about the part of the other side.
Yeah, well, on this note of modesty, I propose we get a short break. After the break, we continue the discussion, which I don't